knee up high, right? We want to be able to hold it. Now in this position, you can see that my foot is below the knee, right, as I hold this position. My head is transferred back to where the weight is over the sole of the foot. From the side, you'll notice, when I'm in this position, there's a slight space underneath my heel. I'm flexing slightly with the back leg. My front leg, my lead leg, I have the foot underneath the knee, and I'm pointing down. Now the pitchers can point up, or they can point down, as long as they're putting some kind of pressure, some tension on the leg, right? You never want a loose leg. All right, the reason that we want to stay on the ball of the foot, all right, and keep our weight transferred back, all right, it's very important as we're striding out. But what happens is, as you start to lead out, by keeping the weight on the ball of the foot, it releases the heel, all right, keeps the weight up and it releases the heel. It's very important, and we'll see why later. Now, how do you learn to keep your weight over the ball of the foot? Most pitchers, if you see them, they can lean back on their heel. Now, I can lean back with a straight leg over my heel. I can stay here all day like this. As I flex and get up onto the ball of the foot, that's much more difficult. And you have to develop the muscle memory in order to do that. Right? The best way is to use a balance beam or a 2x4 drill, as it's referred to. What I've done here is I've taken a 2x6 and I've ripped it down to 4 inches wide. Now, a 2x4 is fine for little leaguers or kids with smaller feet. But as you get a little bigger, you need that extra ½ inch wide, because 2x4 is really 3½ inches wide. What I've done here is I've attached 3 pieces of 2x6 to the top. This will help serve as a rubber later on. The first thing the young pitcher must do with the balance beam is learn to get balance, get the feel of the beam itself. It'll sound strange, but it really is pretty difficult to get your balance. What you do is, on the balls of both feet, bend the legs, keep the hands out in front, try to keep the shoulders over the feet. You just straddle back and forth, right? And you just have to try to develop the balance to stay balanced. The next thing you're going to do is, again, on the balls of the feet. Now, if you'll notice, when the balls of the feet are on the beam, the heels are hanging over, right? You can't possibly stay on the beam and lean down with your heels, you'll just fall off. All right, now, we'll get onto the beam on the balls of the feet, all right, again, shoulder width apart. Now, we'll start out with our hands together, something like the stretch position. As we shift back, right, to get the knee up high, my back leg is fairly straight. It can have a slight flex if that's what it takes to keep balanced over the ball of the foot. Now, that's all you want to do, is come down, up, and then stride. As we're in a high knee position, as we come down, you'll notice that my foot comes down, glides out, and then I land, all right? What we're not doing is coming from here, going out, and then down. What happens is, watch my head. As I come up, if I just go out and down, see where my head is? It's out in front of my belt buckle. Conversely, if we start in this position, and we come down, out, and land, we can land with the nose behind the belt buckle. Now, when you're doing the balance beam drill, obviously you want to land on the sole of the foot, on the ball of the foot, in the high cock position. Now, you're not going to be able to stride out as far as you would on the mound on the beam, at least not in the beginning. All right, here's an early drill that you can use on the balance beam. Take 2 baseballs. I like to put one in the palm of my hand, and that requires that I put a little bit of tension, a little firmness into the hand and the glove, which will be important. We'll see in a minute. If I don't squeeze the ball, obviously it's just going to drop out. So one ball is kept in the palm, the other one we'll just hold as if we were pitching. Hands together, feet apart like we're in the stretch position. Weight over the balls of the feet. Now we're just going to shift back, bending the leg, knee high, and then we're going to drift out into the high cock position. Now this is the high cock position, all right? You'll notice that my back foot is just starting to turn. The ankle is rolling over. This is what's known as squishing the bug, all right? We'll get into that a little bit in a minute. So as I land, you'll notice that my nose should be above my belt or slightly behind it. The front foot is pointed at the right-handed batter's box. My front elbow is used as a sight towards home plate. if you were to draw a straight line or follow this beam, straight along the beam from my back elbow, my back shoulder, my front elbow and shoulder, pointed directly straight towards the plate. Now, some pitchers like to extend the arm out. That's why I think the ball is a good idea in the glove. What you do is you hold the glove palm down, the fingers are going towards the hitter, the thumb is down. In the high cock position with the glove out towards the hitter, you'll notice that my elbow is still even. Now let's turn the beam so it faces the camera. Alright? As we come down, okay, you'll notice that my toe is pointed towards the right-handed batter's box. My elbow, front elbow, is used as a sight. There's a straight line right along this beam from my front elbow, my front shoulder, my back elbow, and you can see my fingers on top of the ball, thumb underneath, pointed towards the shortstop. If I was to bring the arm out towards the hitter, all right, palm down, thumb down, holding the ball, still gripping firm enough to hold on to it, you'll notice that my elbow is still used as a sight. All right, without the beam, let's try working on the form of the lead leg as it drops from the high knee position. All right? Remember, as the knee drops, that's the signal to break the hands. All right, we'll work on that a little bit in a minute. As the leg starts to drop, you'll notice that the side of my foot, the lead foot, the side of the leg, all the way up to the hip, are facing the hitter. All right? That's very important because it keeps the entire body closed. Again, that's the reason we have the ball in the glove. As the hands separate and we start out, we want to use that elbow as a sight. So the shoulders have to be straight along the imaginary line between second base and the plate. The front foot, the lead foot, comes out. We're showing the side of our foot to the hitter. All right? Now, let's imagine out of the high knee position, as I'm leading out, the hands are separated. Just before I land, all right, this is a position that's known as the number 2 position, all right? Both elbows are even with my shoulder, all right? I have not landed yet. Let's imagine here I got 2 inches. I'm standing on a wooden block here. As the foot lands, this front hip is going to open up a little bit, and that's going to allow the foot to land. You'll notice that my head stays back, my shoulders and my upper body stay closed, right along the imaginary line. All right, now from the front, you can see this is the number 2 position. All right, you can see that my shoulders, my elbows are parallel. I've got the hand on top of the ball. I'm using my elbow as a sight. Now, once again, you can have the glove out this way towards the hitter, or you can curl it in. I prefer to curl it in. All right. You can see that the upper body is completely closed. That's important. That's where the power is going to come from as we land. Now, after we leave the block, all right, and we hit the ground, as the foot lands, that's the signal, as the foot lands, to go from the number 2 position to the number 3 position, the high cock position. And that happens just as the front foot plants. All right, number 2 position, number 3 position. Now what happens in the number 3 position is the upper body stays closed, but the front hip, from the number 2 position, the front hip has to open slightly in order to let the foot land with the toe pointed towards the right-handed batter's box. So imagine now that I'm in the air in the number 2 position. As I land, I open up slightly with the hip. Number 3 position, you'll notice the back foot squishing the bug. Let's follow this motion right along the beam. Should make it a little clearer. On the balls of the feet, again I got a ball inside the glove, one in my hand. All right, knee high. As we start to lead out, all right, my toe is pointed towards the right-handed batter's box, and I've slightly opened up my left hip. But my shoulders are still on line. Now, one other thing you should notice is that my head is over my knee. A lot of pitchers you'll see lean back in this position, right? You see them closer towards the first baseman. You really should be right here, balanced, in a good position. The knee should be straight up, right? It shouldn't be in too much, and it shouldn't be open too much, causing the hip to open way open early, right? The hip is open just enough to where it helps release the right hip. Now I squished the bug behind. That allows us to bring the hip up, get the foot out. Let's examine the number 2 position and getting to the number 2 position. Once again, knee high, as we lead down, the side of the leg facing through, all right, using our block. This is the number 2 position, okay? Knee moves, separates the hand. As you're leading out, just at the point where you're just about to make contact, the elbows raise the hands to the shoulder height. Now there are some pitches that'll hold the ball in the number 2 position slightly above the shoulder. Some hold it level with the shoulder. Some will actually have it down a little bit. Really doesn't make any difference as long as when he lands, he can get back into the number 3 position, the high cock position properly, right? 2 position, 3 position. Now, a lot of pitchers have trouble getting to the number 2 position, all right? Remember, it's the elbows that lift the hands. One way to think about it, Dick Mills teaches this, and I think it's a real good exercise. Just simple jumping jack. Start with your thumbs and your index fingers together. Jumping jack motion. Now what happens with a jumping jack is that the elbows lift the hands up into the position. Now in order to do it, you're starting here. Your elbows are slightly in front of the body, and the hands obviously in front of the body, to allow you to go up into the jumping jack position. So this is the number 2 position, jumping jack. We'll just stop right here. That's the number 2 position. As you land, number 3 position. So if you're having problems with it, start with the jumping jack. 2, 3. Very simple. All right, let's work on, we got 1 baseball in the glove. When the hands separate, all right, the knee is high. As the hands separate, it's very important that the baseball be taken out of the glove with the fingers on top and the thumb on the bottom. A lot of pitchers, and some even in the major leagues, will grab the ball from the side. Some even grab it from the bottom. What that does is, you can even see it with the elbow. It puts a lot of stress on the elbow. It's called wrist hooking. If you hear any pitchers wrist hooking, that's what they mean. They're pulling the ball out and they're hooking their wrist to get the ball out of the glove. When you're in this position, as the knee drops, as the hands separate, all right, that's the key. Fingers on top, thumb on the bottom. All right. A lot of pitchers, and I was one of them, as the hands break, I used to come straight down before I would lead out. All right? That has a lot of problems as far as getting into the high cock position. I know from old photos that I was able to get to that position, but many pitchers have trouble because they get the arm down. And by the time they get up into the high cock position where they land, you'll notice that my arm is in the number 2 position, when as I land, I should be in the number 3 position. A lot of times that's caused by too much arm action, either because it's straight down, or because the pitcher is bringing it straight back, or they're flailing. Some pitchers get the elbow behind the back. This is called flailing. As the hand comes out of the glove, they flail to the side. Puts a lot of stress on the shoulder. When you release the ball properly from the glove, all right, the hands separate. All right, the hands are in front of the body. Now, Roger Clemens has developed muscle memory. And what he does is, as the hands separate, he comes down, slightly back. His arm never straightens completely. The elbows come up, bringing the hand, and then into the high cock position. All right, it's called a tight circle. Now his is very good, and Toronto is teaching it to all of its minor leaguers. His hand with the ball, I'll leave the glove here, as he drops, if you look at it from the side, it looks like his arm is straight, but it's not. It's still in a flex position, hand on top of the ball, and it's slightly out in front of his body as his elbows raise to go up into the number 3 position. So that's a great way to teach kids. If they have a straight arm and they're in the number 2 position, as they land, they're in the number 3 position, fine, leave them alone. But if you find that the arm is straight and as they land, they're not in the high cock position, then you've got to shorten up that circle. And you have to come down, slightly back, up, and then into the number 3 position. You don't want to come straight back towards second base. A lot of coaches teach that. It's ludicrous. Right? When the arm comes back, it's just back enough to flex so that the elbows can bring the hand up and then into the high cock position. One thing we touched on earlier, and it's another reason that you want to make sure that you have a full circle of down, up, back, and then up into the 3 position, is that a lot of pitchers get to the high cock position too early. Right? As they're leading out, they're in this position. Now you can see the position of the ball to the head. Much too close to the head to allow me, what I'm going to do is I'm going to throw. As you start to throw, the elbow always leads the ball. So if you're in a proper position, either 90 degrees or slightly back, as your hips start to open, as you start to throw, the elbow leads out in front. And you have to have room. If your ball is too close to the head, there's no room to get velocity. You're just throwing from here more like a catcher would than a pitcher where you can really get out and back. So the tight circle, the whole action, down, back, up, number 3. Work on that, you'll have no trouble at all. If you have to, go back to the jumping jacks, jumping jack motion, and get into the number 3 position. All right, beginning in the number 3 position, right, where we've squished the bug, nose back behind the belt buckle, good body form along our imaginary line towards the plate, right? As we start to release the hip, all right, as we start to throw, again, the elbow is going to come out. This hip is going to drive forward. If you learn nothing more on this tape, absolutely nothing in pitching happens until you're in this position, right? Nothing. Now, think about it. Relief pitchers come in, nobody on base. What do? They pitch from the stretch position, right? If there was any truth to a windup providing velocity, then the relief pitchers would come in and throw from the windup. What happens is, if you're in the proper position, with your head back over your belt buckle, and you're in the number 3 position, at this point, all right, as the hips start to drive, this hip is going to close. This heavy trunk action, all right, it's a very violent explosion of the trunk closing, only occurs if you can pull the posting foot from the rubber. We were all taught to push off the rubber. That was one of my problems. By pushing off the rubber, you end up keeping all of your weight on your heel. And as you start to drive out, your weight is so far over the heel that as the hips start to open, you just drag that hip through. You can't get that hip to explode to provide power to the pitch. And most pitches, I know I was like that, as I would throw the ball, after it would be released, my foot would still be back here, and then I would follow through. What you want to do is out of the number 3 position, all right? And that's why it's important that as you come down and lead out, you squish the bug before you land. By squishing the bug and keeping the weight back over the ball of the foot, now I've released this hip. This hip can explode closed, and I'm going to drive in with this back knee. I'm going to go forward and in towards my body. All right? And that allows the back foot to come around. Now you notice when I follow through, the sole of my foot points up towards the sky, and my toe points you, or the third base side. And that allows me to fall over the leg. One other thing you'll notice is that as I deliver the ball, After the ball is thrown, right, you watch the angle of the arm. My arm comes out, full extension, towards you, towards the plate. Then it starts to decelerate, and it should be brought all the way to the side of the body. In order to do that, I have to show a flat back. All right, what do we mean by a flat back? You'll hear coaches in Little League all the time, the ball's staying up, coach will be yelling, show him a flat back, show him a flat back. What they mean is that after the pitch is delivered, as the hand goes down, right, you'll see the back of my shoulder. You'll actually see the back. If I had a hip pocket, you can see that. All the way down. What that allows you to do is fully decelerate the arm. Takes all the stress off of the shoulder. This hand comes all the way back. The other thing I think it does is that it aids in getting this leg up behind. If you watch my back and then watch my leg, they move in unison. And I can really get that back foot up behind. That allows me to cross over. If you're in the number 3 position, this knee, as you start to explode the hips, you'll notice this hip, the knee rather, is frozen here. It doesn't drift in towards the hitter. As it's here, as you start to finish, the leg will straighten as you fall over it. But once you're out in this position here, that knee is set. Don't let it drift in towards the plate. A great drill for learning how to use a flat back or follow through in general is to get down in this position here. It's like the number 3 position. What we're going to do is, I've got my back foot, if you can see it, I'm squishing the bug. My left toe, lead toe, is pointed towards the right hand batter's box. My shoulders are still closed. My left hip, lead hip, is open slightly, just like if we were landing. Now I'm just going to follow through. My knee is locked. It's going to stay in this position. I'm going to come up and over to follow through. Try it again. All right, that's a great drill for practicing the flat back, getting all the way down, showing the back. Is starting from the rubber, just draw out 5 steps and draw a line. Now, depends on your feet. If you're 5'7", you got size 12 feet, then you've got to maybe shorten that up. But that's approximately where you want to land. All right? Now again, I'm not on a mound, but I'm trying to keep the weight back. And I'm falling just a bit short of that line, which is fine, as long as the weight is back. As we're leading out, in order to keep your weight back, and this is something that you'll do on the balance beam, and when you get on the mound, it's very important. So as you start to lead down, as the hands separate, it's a feeling of pulling back with the upper body. You lead out with the front hip, not with the shoulder. The hip goes down and out first before the shoulder moves at all. So you are leaning back slightly, keeping the head behind the belly button. All right, your belt buckle, your belly button, your nose is back here. So as you lead out, right, so that when you land in the high cock position, your nose is still in the center of your body. That will allow you to properly open the hips and generate the power with that explosion of the trunk and the hips. And here's a great drill that you can do on flat ground, and then eventually you want to be able to do it on the balance beam. And this will ensure that your weight is on the ball of your foot and that you're keeping your weight back as you're leading out for the number 2 position. What I want you to do is just start with the jumping jack position, thumbs and index finger together, knee high. Now, I got the weight on the ball of the foot. As I start down to get into the number 2 position, I stop and then bring the foot back up without touching the ground. All right? That takes some practice to get used to the balance. It's up, number 2, back up. All right? You try that a couple of times, then do it on the beam. All right, let's get back to the balance beam. One drill we can start there is you're going to start with the ball in the glove, and you're going to hold it there. Up, down, knee high, out, and then stop in the high cock position. All right, and you're just going to keep coming up, hands separate, high cock position. All right, you're going to keep doing that over and over and over. Then the next drill grab a piece of towel, get out into the high cock position. All right? Get out as far as you can, head back behind, get into the proper position, and then you're just going to follow through, and you use the towel here as resistance. I'm running out of room here, you get the idea. Here I am in the number 3 position, high cocked, follow through, fall over. Then what you'll do, again, the ball is in the glove. Knee high, go through the entire motion. Then turn around, start from the wind-up, go through your motion. Eventually what you want to do is you want to be able to do, starting from here, with your eyes closed. And this is not that easy. You close your eyes, land on the beam. It takes practice. Then, starting in this position, close your eyes, fall over. There are a lot of pitchers that have done this drill that can do their full wind-up position entirely with their eyes closed. You can imagine that if you can get your weight back, stay balanced, land on this beam in the proper position with your eyes closed, you've really mastered it. All right, let's quickly review what we've done so far. First off, we want to make sure that when we start our delivery, that we flex the back leg, which brings the head and the upper body over the ball of the foot. Remember, the heel is off the ground. All right, as we lift the knee up, the foot is either pointed up or pointed down, putting some tension on the leg. All right, as the leg starts to drop, that's the signal for the hands to separate. As we lead down, the side of the foot, the side of the lead leg, all the way up to the hip, are facing the hitter. Our belt buckle is facing third base. For a left-handed pitcher, it would be towards the first baseman. As we drop down, all right, now this is the point where as the hands are separating, as we're leading down, if the weight is properly balanced over the sole of the ball of the foot here, you can now lift the heel and start to squish the bug. This year, Stottlemyre worked with the Yankees' Arabu. He was having trouble, he was sitting back on his heel. And that causes, again, the back side to drag, doesn't allow the hip to open. What they have him doing is actually going up onto the ball of his foot as he drops down. Now that allows you to get into this position. If you watch Mariano Rivera, you have a forehead VCR. Tape him from behind. What you'll see is as he starts to lead out, he swishes that bug. He's in this position. As he releases the ball, his foot is already pulled away from the rubber. You can really watch the way his leg drives in. All right, as we're leading out, you'll notice that on the balance beam, you have to land on the sole of your foot. Now, the reason that I like that drill so much is that there are a lot of pitchers that land on their heel. Now, they used to teach power pitchers to land on the heel. I really don't know why. A lot of times what it does is as you land on your heel, it causes the hip to open too much, too early. So if you lead with the side of your foot, and as you land, you just open your hip just enough to land on the ball of the foot and point the toe towards the right-handed batter's box, you can keep the upper body completely closed. All right? Again, that's why it's important, too, that we use the elbow as a sight. Our elbow is the sight between home plate, the front shoulder, the back elbow, and then the hand is on top of the ball facing the shortstop for right-handed pitchers. If you want to get the glove out, put a ball in the glove, practice getting into the high cock position, putting a little bit of tension on that glove to hold the ball in it. But again, the elbow, shoulder, should be perfectly in line with the imaginary line between home plate and second base. After we land, we're in the number 3 position. Our shoulders are still tight. We are on that straight imaginary line. Now the hips start to drive. The arm gets led by the elbow. Now, something that's important and you have to watch this especially with little leaguers, is that as the elbow pulls through, as the arm starts to extend to throw, you'll notice that the baseball is above my head. I've seen a lot of kids in little league age where they lead so much with the elbow that they whip the ball through and it never goes above the top of the head. It puts tremendous strain on the elbow and leads to severe problems later on. So even though you're leading with the elbow, there comes a point where the arm fully extends. And that has to happen by the ball being above your head.
Where do we begin? First of all, we're going to scroll names in this entire segment. I'd like for the segment to be the entire show because it is epidemic portion of guys from 1974. Tommy John is the first one, and there's 1,400 professional pitchers since 1974. John Regali from Hardball Times, and they track this stuff on a site. And this is going to scroll because I want to show the magnitude of the epidemic portion. But you've been a big league pitching coach for 15 years. You've been in organizations for how long? Pitching
40.
Coach.
Pitching coach 30.
30. Your dad was an architect and a big front office guy with the Pirates.
79 World Series.
79 World Series. Since you were born, you were in a baseball uniform.
I've had a uniform on since
Your dad played in the last game at Ebbets Field.
And Polo Grounds.
Polo Grounds. Okay. You've been around it. Tommy John surgery, epidemic. There were more Tommy John surgeries in 2014 than the entire 90s as we continue to scroll these names. First, I want to say why, but I want to show some of the most recent guys, unlike the ones that are scrolling behind us, in guys that are brand names. And trust me when I tell you, folks, there's 1,400 on this name, and they're tracking it as of most recently in the last month of major league pitchers with all sorts of different deliveries. And yes, this is a fun screen for me, Rick, because we're going to be able to see different things. But guys from all different ages, different deliveries, left, right, Carter Caps. I mean, you go through the whole thing, Hoshaver, guys, and you see the Zach Wheeler, and I can't even keep up. And that was my point. Of to 1,400 names with some big leaguers, and all of these that we're showing right here, folks, had Tommy John surgery. There is a problem, to say the least. No question about it. And these were some of the names. And when I look at this, I think of some of the crazy statistics that not only at the major league level, but also at the amateur level.
Right.
And I know you know this because you were part of the ASMI, stuff that was going on. But look at this here, people here. 1,397, I said that, since 1974. You got 87% of games in 2007 that somebody in that game, at least one pitcher, had Tommy John. How about this? 2007 to 2011, 57% of these surgeries are from 15 to 19 years old.
Unbelievable.
According to the American Journal of Sports Medicine. All right, so now we're getting something. And I loved you as a pitching coach. It was a latter part of my career. Why? And here, I asked you, and I said, I know it's not that simple, but if you could give me 4 points, would you go over these 4 points and go item for item and maybe give the best you can?
Well, this is the one thing that we learned from Dr. Andrews' studies and Dr. Fleisig's studies at ASMI. The arm position at foot contact. It's a black or white, yes or no. When that foot hits the ground, you have to be somewhere right in here.
Okay, we'll get to that. What's this palm down, elbow high?
That means that a foot contact, if you're somewhere in this position, your palm is down, facing straight down, that's one of those.
Then you had direction to home plate. Because I want to get some video. Direction is obvious. What?
Direction to home plate, that if you're way across yourself to home plate, because hip rotation velocities are linked to fastball velocity, how fast the hips rotate. So if you're way across yourself, you lock out those hips. So if you throw hard and rotate slow, that's a major factor.
And then the last one was?
The front knee collapsing at ball release, because that also slows down how fast the hips rotate.
So how fast are the hips going? I know you had some
Right, so think about it this way, Al. Think of the pitching delivery as an upside-down tornado. It starts to spin slower here, about 1 3/4 revolutions per second is how fast the hips would rotate if it went in a full circle. The upper torso goes twice as fast. So it starts spinning slow here, and it keeps going faster and faster and faster.
So therefore...
So 1 second. For in golf, they call that the X factor, the it factor.
Okay.
Because how does Ricky Fowler, who's about this high, hit a ball 320-some yards? He rotates fast. He spins fast.
Okay.
So many people say, like, with short pitchers, like Stroman, for example, or Pedro, how do they throw so hard?
Billy Wagner,
Right. How do they throw so hard? They're so small. Well, Indy 500 cars go faster than NASCARs. It's not the size of the car, it's how fast you're spinning.
And real quick, because I want to go to some video, and I know they're going to be in our ear. Revolutions per second, the fastest known, you told me that when
The fastest of any athletic performance, how fast the internal rotation goes forward, how fast
Which
your
is
arm
how fast?
is going forward. It goes about, if it went in a full circle,
Yeah.
it'd go about 27 revolutions in 1 second.
Okay, so that's really fast. In order to throw a ball 90, now we see 100 miles an hour.
And now it's probably going faster because you got guys throwing harder than they've ever had in the
Let's go to a video because I still want to talk to you about why. Why has this happened? But let's go to the poster child of this, right? Mark Pryor. Now, this is where we get to have fun here. What do you mean about foot contact and elbow?
There you go. His foot's getting down right now.
Yep.
And look where he is right here.
So what does that mean? What does that mean?
What it means is this hand right here should be here.
That high.
He should be in this position.
All right, what's acceptable? Because we see all different deliveries, right?
Somewhere about in here.
So it is known, based on your research and your time, by the way,
Dr. Andrews.
But you were in Birmingham as a AA pitching coach with the White Sox.
Right.
And you were going over with Glenn Fleissig at ASMI,
Right.
part of the lab. And you learned all this. Is that what they've come up with
That's
at
what
foot contact?
At foot contact.
All right, play that.
They're basically saying...
Play that again. Keep going. Mm-hmm. Let's see another one. All right, so that's a curveball. And he ended up being, the elbow, right? All right, stop. Let's do one more. Let's see.
Go back.
Here's a
You gotta
heater.
go
This back up. Let's do that again. Back up, and let's see the landing. Just that foot contact, guys.
Go back.
Back up, back up, back up. Soon as the heel touch, go forward. There. All right, so it's similar. Fastball.
Yeah.
So because he's
Really
here
late.
and not here, we're seeing a percentage of those that get hurt.
It's putting all the pressure right here on the UCL.
Are you okay? All right, let's keep moving because there's a couple other guys that we want to see. Play this forward. Let's see what else we have.
But that's a major common thread.
That's a major. Okay,
Major
Strasburg.
common thread.
Strasburg. Now he's overcoming. He's stud. He's doing it. Stop again. Let's go back up. So he's a toe guy. Back up a little bit more. That's too entrenched in the dirt. Back up. Nope. As soon as it barely touches the ground, please go forward. And so he's more toe. Pryor was. Stop. Okay.
Same position.
So is this the problem?
Right. Same position.
So is it because of the takeaway on your when it comes out of your glove?
It's a timing mechanism. Everybody has their own timing mechanism, and everybody does it an individual
Is it
way.
what is the? I've said it. Inverted W M. What is?
Well,
this
he's not there because the other common flaw is that if this elbow was way up here,
Which Pryor did.
He's not there. Pryor did.
Mark Pryor. All right, keep going. Please move it forward. All right, so now he's he's more solid. Keep going.
Right.
Keep going. All right. Let's go to another one.
Go back for a second.
Okay, go back.
Go back.
See, this is fun, isn't it, Rick?
This is what happens when you're late. The intent of this pitch is down and away.
Okay.
Now he's late. This ends up to the other side of the plate over here.
I understand.
That's what happens when you're really
All right, go to the
late.
next guy. I want to see another guy. Yeah.
So if you're watching a game and you don't have slow motion
All right, here, stop right
footage,
here. Okay, is this
There you
the
go.
end? So
Yeah.
his elbow goes higher than his shoulder.
Yep.
That's what you're talking about. He's at foot contact, his heel, so he's similar to Pryor, not Strasburg, and his elbow is higher than his shoulder?
right, and his palm is way below the shoulder line.
Here, move one more click, please. One more click. Yes. Back. I mean, see, I just want to show how minute. One more back. Nah. I mean, it is so, like what you were saying, it's like
It's because it's happening so fast.
Yeah. Okay.
It's
So
happening
that's
so fast.
So is that why elbow surgery? I mean,
That's one of the biggest reasons.
Let me tell you
That's one
something.
of the
He's having a
biggest
good
red
year.
flags.
He's having a good year. He's pitching well.
Well, again, it's not.
Keep going. Play it again.
Just because you're really good doesn't mean you're not at risk of injury.
How many guys are pitching and he had the hammer? I mean, the big curveball.
Big time.
But let me see another one. What's another guy before we can go here? We got another one? Who's across? There was a. Oh, okay, Weaver. You mentioned about direction. This is like he's the poster child for across his body, right?
Yeah.
Stop. Look at that.
Yeah.
What?
So if the camera's coming from here, but if it was center field camera and you drew a line through here,
yeah,
it's probably going right about.
But he
here.
played. He's got 50. This is the whole thing. When I talk to my kid and kids, they're like, "Oh, well, he played 15 years in the big leagues, and he's driving a Mercedes and a Maserati. He's got a big boat."
He did, but look, when he signed, what was he like mid-90s?
Yeah.
And then as time goes by, because what happens is hip rotation velocities are linked to fastball velocity. Once you get locked out here. Those hip rotations.
I know they're going to be honest,
slow.
but here, if you had, what are the three? Look at this. We're still running these names, by the way.
Oh my God!
But what are some of the things at home? I have a son in high school. I'm around youth baseball. Like, what can we pick off? Rest? Is it velocity? Like, what's going on?
I think it's a combination of rest. Overuse is a big factor. Pitching 12 months out of the year.
Okay.
Dr. Andrews would say a minimum of 3 to 4 months rest.
Okay.
And then you have to be conditioned in order to be able to do this. Jared was in unbelievable physical condition. That's why he was able to withstand this for a long period of time. But what happens is as time goes by, the velocity starts to drop.
All right, we got to go. We got to touch on like 9 other things.
I grip all my pitches differently. A lot of people try to grip their pitches the same so they can take the sign with the ball behind their back and not have to worry about hiding it. I throw my fastball. I'm different from a lot of people is that I don't have real long fingers, and I throw the ball back in my hand. There's not a lot of gap there. I don't get it out on my fingertips like that. So I throw it like that, and I throw my fastball with all 4 seams, so when the ball comes off like that, it has a good tight rotation, and you want the ball to appear that it has a ride to it, or as you hear people say, a rising fastball. What it is, it just doesn't drop as fast as other ones. And so that's basically how I throw my fastball. Sometimes, if I want to try to run it in on a hitter, I'll throw it with a 2-seam fastball. And because of the way it comes out, you'll get more movement on the ball, either in or in on a right-hander or away from a left-hander. Now, I don't throw a slider, but I throw a curveball, and I choke it a lot like that in my hand. And this finger here just lays on the ball. There's no pressure on it. Your pressure points are on this finger here and on your thumb. And the only difference in a fastball release and a breaking ball release is your wrist position. People think you twist your wrist and snap the ball, but you don't. On a fastball, the ball comes through like this. On a curveball, the only difference is you turn your wrist. And it comes out on a curveball, it comes out like this, where on a fastball, it comes out with your hand behind it like this. So it's just your wrist position, curveball, to a fastball. Now my changeup, I learned to grip on it. I always had a problem with my changeup throwing it too hard and being inconsistent. Changeup needs to be 10 to 15 miles an hour slower than the velocity on your fastball. Really it needs to be 15 and below, but if you throw it down at 10 miles an hour, it's very effective. So I use it as a rule of thumb. It has to be below 10 miles an hour, and it has to be down by the knees. And I throw mine what they call circle change, and I hold it like that, where this finger isn't even on the ball, and I hold it tight. And the ball comes out of my hand. You throw it with your position the same, your wrist position as a fastball. And when it comes out, it comes off like this. And my middle finger here is the last release point on the ball. Well, I put it on this seam to try to get it to come out that way. So what it has is this type of rotation. And what it'll do is it'll also sink and act kind of like a screwball to a left-hander. And has been a very effective pitch for me, and it's gotten better and better.